All right, you guys seem to love R&B music theory, so in this video, I'm going to go through some more chords for R&B. So if you want that 90s vibe, that classic Timbaland vibe, that Aaliyah sound, that classic sound, this video is for you. So firstly, we're going to talk about a type of chord voicing. So I'm going to play it first, and then we'll get into the technical. So what I'm doing is playing the root note in the bass, and then I'm playing the second half of the seventh chord in my right hand up an octave. So you could do that for major chords or minor. All right, so let's get into the theory. Now that one is pretty simple. I'm just going to show you quickly on the screen. It's a lot easier on the screen because you could apply this to piano, but everybody can apply it to their DAW. So the first technique is to write a seventh chord. So if we're in the C major scale, which is all the white notes starting from C, to build chords, you simply skip every other note within this scale. So if I start at D, for example, which is my first chord, we're going to skip E, go to F, skip G, go to A, skip B, go to C. That's called a seventh chord, mainly because we're going up to what's called the seventh scale degree. So this is the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, according to starting at D. Okay, if you started at C, that'd be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then the octave or the eighth. Okay, so that's why it's called a seventh chord, and the minor is determined by the way the chord is structured. I call that chord DNA or chord codes. If you go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory magic, you can learn a lot more about chord codes. So that's our D minor chord. Now, the way I'm playing it is I'm taking this bottom note down an octave, and then I'm making it even thicker by copying that bottom note down another octave, and it creates a full sound. Now, this is default velocity, so it sounds lifeless. But when you play it pretty heavy, so all we're doing is going through these scale degrees, okay, and doing the same exact technique. Now, the next scale degree is E, and without boring you to tears, it's the same chord type, E minor seventh. So it's D minor seventh, E minor seventh. This is just a triad, the second half of the seventh chord. Remember that we pulled that root note down an octave. Let's make this. Okay, now the next chord type in this structure is going to be, we're just going up the scale. So it's D, E, F in this case. So the next chord is going to start at F. We're going to skip G, go to A. Skip B, go to C. And if we continue this scale, which you will get the project files for free, just go to busyworksbeats.com/betterbeatmaker. I'll leave a link below. So skip B, go to, skip G, go to A, skip B, go to C, skip D, go to E. That creates a seventh, major seven. Let's get this timing right. All right, so this, again, the velocity, I like to play stuff by hand, but in the computer, you're gonna have to, I'll show you a shortcut in FL. So we're gonna take this bass note, bass, B-A-S-E, okay, pull it down, take these two notes, pull them down an octave. The reason this works is this half step. Okay, now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you a shortcut in FL. Go to your tools, go to humanize, and we're gonna turn the time offset up and the velocity offset up. So now it has more of a human timing. Okay, and you can repeat that over and over and over again. Okay, so that's how you get that sound. Now that's a very specific way of voicing your chords. Now we're gonna get into specific chord progressions. We're always gonna reference the C major scale. C major scale is all the white notes starting from C. We're going to copy this. We're going to paste it. All right. So we're going to have two octaves here to reference. Pull this to the right. I like to keep it to the side just so it's out the way. So the first chord progression is a 2-5-1. When I say two, I'm speaking about scale degrees. Technically, we should be saying it as second, fifth, first, but people get lazy, so they say 2-5-1. Not to be confused with chord codes. Okay, so I'm going to speak traditional music theory only to quickly speak, but truly this is the second scale degree, the fifth scale degree, and the first scale degree. What does that mean? When you have a scale like a major scale, once you count up from the root note or the key, this is called the tonic. Okay, so the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and it keeps going on and repeating. So when I'm saying the second, fifth, and the first, I mean the second scale degree, the fifth scale degree, the first scale degree. And we build chords off of this point. How do you build chords? Is skip every other note. What we're going to do is create seventh chords just by skipping every other note until we have 4 notes, basically. So we have D, F, A, C. So that's how we get our first chord. Now, you've seen this a million times on my channel. Okay, but I'm going to show you a more advanced technique for those who are new. We're going to start at G, which is the fifth. And we're going to go to G, I meant to say. G, B, D, F would be the next chord. Now, this is called a dominant seventh because you have a diminished on top. This is what creates that push-pull effect, this tritone right here. You don't need to know what that means. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/musictheorymagic to learn a lot more about music theory. Okay, so what we're going to do is go back to the tonic. So we're going to start at the bottom, skip every other note, going up until we have 4 notes. Now, you can get a little creative with these chords, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Let's just first map them out. Okay, so this is what it sounds like with the vanilla voicing, I call. Just sounds kind of basic. So what you could do is pull this down 6 semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is called a tritone substitution. We call it tritone substitution because we're pulling that dominant chord down a tritone, which is 6 semitones. And because these notes are in common, it has a nice sound, and everything else drops a half step. Now, the cool part about these dominant chords is you can flatten notes, sharpen notes. So let's sharp the 7th note, raise it up. You can get creative with the way you place this note, is my point, so that it doesn't feel so diminished at the top. Because here you would have a major chord. This would technically make this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's a major 7 chord we just created. But on paper, it'd be called a sharp 7. Okay, so there's many ways to voice this. Now let's get a little more R&B. Let's take these top 2 notes, pull them down an octave. Now we're in a dark octave, so let's pull this up. This creates a lot of tension because these notes here, they're either a whole step or a half step away. These create so much tension in the chord progression. Now what we're going to do though is Control Z this. Let's go all the way back. And we need to thicken up this chord. So firstly, let's take these bottom notes, pull them down an octave. And let's separate these bottom notes completely. And then let's revoice these. Now pull everything up. Now it sounds a little more spread. So you don't have to revoice that chord. You can just leave it as is. There's no hard rules here. Just showing you different ways you could do it. Then you could transpose this, hitting shift up or shift down to a different key. That's called 2-5-1. Okay, let's move a little bit quicker here. So this next chord progression is going to start. We're going to let me copy from here. Let's copy this, save time, and I'm going to pitch it back up to C major. Let's move to a new pattern here. Let's copy and paste the C major scale, which is just all the white notes starting from C. It's a lot easier to remember. We're going to start with the tonic. I'm going to move quicker here because now we're just using simple scale degrees. We have the first. We're going to use the fourth. It's going to give us F. We're going to move to our 6th, which is A. That's the relative minor also. And then we're going to move back to the dominant chord, which is going to pull us back to the tonic. Dominant chords like to resolve back to the tonic. I didn't realize how important that was until year whatever of music theory, how important dominant chords are. I overlooked them. I don't want you guys to overlook them. It's really the key to all chord progressions is understanding that dominant and half-step movements and diminished chords and how they push-pull. So long story short, we got this. So let's create these chord types. Remember to build chords, you skip every other note within the scale. Let's build a C major chord, C major 7th chord. this down an octave. Some chords just sound better in a lower octave. It's not really what chord you're using, but which octave you're using. So just keep that in mind when you're building these lush chords and they sound kind of thin. Move them to a different octave. You'll probably get a whole better sound out of it. Let's move to A minor 7th. So we have C major 7th, F major 7th, A minor 7th, and then we're going to move to G dominant 7th here. Now this is what I call vanilla voicing, so we're going to revoice this. Sounds super bland. Okay, so the first step is what I like to do. This is not a rule. I like to pick a point where the note should not go above that point. So in this case, I want to go from C to C in that octave. Everything else needs to fall back into this octave. So I'm going to pull these notes down. And if that sounds too cluttered, what we can also do is take this second note, pull that down. Okay, another thing we could do is omit the third or pull it down. Now, I wouldn't usually pull it down a third. I would usually raise the third up an octave. So we're going to take all these thirds, pull them up. Let's pull this again. You got to be in the right octave for this to sound cool. So this sounds cool. My ear likes the chord progression up until this last chord. So let's figure out how to make this cooler. So we're using the half step. Let's use that tritone substitution, which is pulling this down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That sounds way more like we're drinking hot apple cider. Now, notice when you pick that point where notes shouldn't go above that point, it just sounds more homogeneous. It doesn't sound so like different. When you have frequencies that go all over the place, it just sounds different. So pulling those notes down can help. Let's change the key. Okay, now let's thicken this up. So I'm just showing you different ways you can enhance these chord progressions. Let's go down an octave. Okay, so now you get that vibe. Okay, you can pull it down further, but we're getting into the low tones at that point. All right, so there's more things we could do to it, adding tones to go through melody, but I'm not gonna go through too much in one video. Let's pull this up a half step. Okay, so that's another progression you could use. A little more for like moving music that keeps moving. Okay, it's not really for overly vibe stuff. Okay, here we're gonna move from C. Now we're gonna get into what are called chord extensions. And chord extensions are when you go from a note and you skip every other note and you just keep skipping notes until you build these big chords. We're going to build a big chord extension called a ninth chord. Now, I can't teach you everything about music theory in this video. It would just take too long. We do have a free course called the Better Beatmaker course. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/betterbeatmaker because in that course, I'll teach you music theory, melody, beat making, genre, mixing, sound design, song structure. Okay, so you have the whole palette as opposed to just these little bullet points. So what I'll do now is create what's called the minor scale. So let's just quickly grab the natural minor. This is called a parallel scale. Okay, so this parallel scale, instead of C major, we're playing C minor, which, okay, is different. For many reasons, I just don't feel like going into everything about everything. So in this case, we're gonna build the chords from this instead of C major. So now we're gonna start at C, skip every other note going up until we have built out a ninth chord. And again, I teach you how to count those scale degrees. It's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. So we're going to map out the chord until we get D as our top note. Long story short, it's going to be a minor ninth, so I'll just save time by doing it this way. This is a very jazzy chord. And I found that this octave, C4, tends to work the best in FL. I think this octave is 2 off from other DAWs, so it might be called C2 in your DAW. Okay, so let's move from this minor ninth. Let's keep this minor vibe going. Let's pull this up. Now, what we're doing here is counting up 5 semitones. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're playing the same chord. Okay, now we're going to use what's called the major 7th chord. When you get into major ninths, I don't like major 11th chords. I just don't think they sound good because of the diminished. Major ninth chords work a lot too, but too many ninth chords just sounds like the same thing. You want contrast. So here we're going to use B flat. Okay, so this would be, again, starting here, B flat, skip every other note going up. A, D, B flat, D, F, and then let's move this. So let's build this chord. Let me double check here. We have B flat, skip C, go to D, skip D, or E flat, go to F. So we have B flat, D, F, then skip G, go to A. This should be there. But this creates that. This is the dominant of, so 0, first, second, third, fourth, fifth will be the G. We're getting this diminished here, and this diminished chord is going to pull some of the vibe out. So I'm going to make this a major 7th instead. Let's use a dominant 7th here at G, since this is the dominant chord. As you can see, some notes aren't in this scale, so I'm kind of forcing it, but this is the rule that I want to show you, is it's okay to go outside of the scale. I can't really explain key modulation to you guys. It was just, again, it's too much to explain. But usually to resolve key modulation, you could use the 2-5-1 approach. So we're leading back into this tonic by using the 5th, the dominant chord, to transition back into this tonic. And all you have to do is make a dominant chord 7 semitones up from the root note. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That lands on G. So we're using this dominant chord to wrap back into this key. So we're going out of the key, using a dominant chord to wrap us back into the key. Let's revoice this chord. That one could use a little more revoicing, but to save time, let's move this to our layer so you guys can hear the actual chord stack. Let's also go back. I meant to do this in this. Let's hear our progress so far so you guys can hear the real context. And then I'll show you some more tricks. Okay, so let's map all this out. I'll mute my mic so you guys can hear. right, so these are just building blocks. You still have to learn how to customize chords, where the melody goes. You change it up based on what you're doing. There's a lot of techniques we didn't talk about. Key modulation. There's so much stuff we just didn't even get into. Okay, using secondary dominants. There's a lot to get into. Let's just keep going here. We have the major seventh. Let's move this. Let's do C. Let's keep building chord progressions here. We have the C major seventh, then we're going to move to the minor seventh chord at B, half step down. Now, this is called chromatic movement, so I'm going down one half step at a time. This is very gospel-y to do it this way. Now, if you wanted to be more jazzy about it, you could start using your diminished chords, augmented chords. Augmented chords usually want to move upwards. Diminished usually moves down, or into a minor chord, I should say, because they have that 0-3 in common. So now what we're gonna do is let's start making this sound different. Makes it a little more melancholy. And again, you don't have to play it all like this, all in one section. You can pull these notes apart. Let's pull these octaves out. All right, so lastly, let's move into a different chord progression. We have the 1, 5, 6, 4. Okay, so I'll move a little bit quicker here, but again, everything's played 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're not hearing the real world concept. So in this last two examples, I'll write 2 chord progressions and show you where I'm applying these techniques. So we have 1, 5, 6, 4. And then we're gonna build the chords out. Let's just start with the major 9 to make this more exciting. And now again with major 9, actually let's do major 7 and then use that bass as a bass octave. Okay, so we have the 2, the 5. We're going to do a dominant ninth chord. The reason I'm doing this is I want to show you guys something. Now that octave is so way up there. Let's pull it down. Let's use a minor 7th here for A. Separate that octave. I know I'm moving quickly here, but you guys already saw these techniques. Actually, let me pull this back up. And then let's do F. Let's do a major 7th chord. Let's do. Now, I'm deciding the chord types based on what I'm going to do to the chords. There's no like right or wrong way to start. Okay, now what we're going to do is pull that down an octave. Now this G, we can alter these notes to become something else. We could sharpen the 5th, we could flatten the 5th, we could sharpen the 7th, flatten the 7th. We could add the 11th, and let's make this an 11th chord. This is a dominant 11th. The shortcut is basically the 5th and the 9th can be moved, okay? And then the 7th and the 11th can be moved. Okay, so notice to get to each, you have to skip the note in between. So that's usually what changes in the chord. Let's do a sharp 11. Let's do a sharp 7. Or we could do sharp. Now, I don't usually use 11, so just letting y'all know. Let's do the 9th, and we're going to sharpen that. And then we're going to pull this down 6 semitones. All right, so it still sounds vanilla, the voicing here, so let's change up the voicing. Inverting notes. See how that dun, dun, that added so much energy that's simply adding that bass. And my ear wants to hear dun. Okay, because that's the chromatic going up. So let's see, does this chord have D in it? It doesn't. So we're gonna add D in the bass here. Just gonna force it in. Now here that, I'm gonna go. My ear wants to hear G. So that would make this F major ninth with the G in the bass, the ninth in the bass. Let's just see what it sounds like with G in the bass. And now we have that like Christmas sound. So that's how you alter chords, and you have decisions that you make in chord progressions, especially with R&B. It's really, R&B is about voicing more than it is about the chord type. It's about voicing these chords. And again, everything's playing at hardest velocity. So let's start humanizing these chords so they don't sound like they're just slamming the same thing. Now let's add some bounciness. And this is where R&B also has a lot of influence when you add these notes in between the chords. So as long as you resolve, now we're getting into melody territory, but as long as you resolve your intervals, you can pretty much go anywhere or use whole steps to kind of navigate around. So I could just add a note, A, and I'm gonna go up a whole step and then back. This one takes me out of key, so let's do. So now we're getting into the bounce of R&B. This is a second layer. A lot of people think of this all in one. I like to separate the chords and melody into different layers. So you have the rhythm layer of your melody or chords. You have the contrast layer, or usually the bass layer. You have the, the rhythmic, you have the harmony layer, which is your chords. And then you have your top line. And your top line is what we're kind of adding in currently. Another thing with R&B, we're not trying to take this into R&B masterclass. Okay, so you could slide the notes here in this glissando technique. So it goes bring like that. Now in this case, I don't want it to bring because it sounds off. Okay, so I'm gonna pull that C that we had up here down, which we already have in the bass, but it was lower. And this is how you bring your chord progressions alive. So we took a while to get here, but when people don't understand the principles, they start just guessing. And once you have a toolbox of what you could do to liven up a chord progression or liven up a melody, that's when your chords are gonna start sounding more expressive. Okay, let's go to a brand new chord progression. We're gonna start from scratch. Let's do, so here I'm gonna get pretty advanced. Let's just start with one of my favorite chord types, a minor ninth. I just like this chord. Let's start here and just move around. I'm gonna show you different techniques you can do to move around. So firstly, what we can do is wherever you're going to land, so pick your third chord. Doom. Okay, so let's say I want this. And I want a chord in between. So to determine the chord in between, wherever I land, I'm gonna go to the fifth of that chord and I'm gonna create a dominant chord. So in this case, we could use dominant ninths, dominant 11ths, the dominant seventh chords. We're gonna go to the fifth of this chord, which is 7 semitones up from the tonic. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, then we're gonna place that dominant chord here. You could keep it in place or you could use the tritone substitution, or you could simply just revoice the chord. And remember, with dominant chords, you can alter the way they're played. So if you don't like the voicing of this, you could raise the 5th and the 9th. And that creates that 90s type of R&B sound. Now, also, people omit the 7th a lot. So you can sharpen the 7th. That also creates like a 90s type of vibe. Or you could flatten the 7th. Creates like a mystery sound. My ear just likes the sharp 5, sharp 9. It just has the best tone. Okay, so we're going to copy the same chord type. And now my ear hears that half step movement here. So I'm going to listen to what my ear wants to hear next as far as anticipating a note. Okay, so. Okay, so I'm listening to my ear. Now my ear is guiding me as far as fifths because D to A is a 5th. If you look at the top notes here, D to A is that jump. And really, A to E is the 5th as well. D to A is a 5th. So you start to realize melody and chords overlap, but you still have to know how to navigate the middle part. So I went, okay, so that, I'm going to copy this chord type. And let's see where this, now my ear wants to hear F at the top, but let's see if that's the 5th of G. And what do you know? D at the root note is the 5th of where we're landing, and my ear probably wants to hear this dominant chord. So dominant chord, what I'm showing you here for those who aren't grasping what I'm showing you how dominant chords, wherever you land, pick the dominant chord before it, and you'll always have this push-pull effect. I used to overlook dominant chords so much because I wasn't using dominant 7th and dominant 9th chords. Once you get into altered chords, dominant 9th chords and dominant 7th chords become one of your favorite chord types because you can resolve them into any chord. Or I should say, you can resolve any chord using dominant chord. So even though this isn't the dominant chord of the scale, I'm using the secondary dominant to land. And funny enough, we started at G, we ended at G. So this is the dominant, secondary dominant. That's how we get that vibe, that 90s soulful vibe. Now let's add the vibe to it as far as the velocity. So I want you guys to study more. Go to busyworksbeats.com/musictheorymagic if you want to get deeper into the dominant chords and how they're used. If you just want these project files for free and you want to learn beat making, which is a very different craft, go to busyworksbeats.com/betterbeatmaker. It's a completely free course where you can get these project files and many more project files. But also, you'll learn music theory, melody making, beat making, mixing, sound design. You'll learn song structure, artist styles, and what else? Song arrangement, if I didn't already say that. So thank you for listening and watching. It's Game from busyworksbeats.com. Like the video, subscribe if you're new. Peace.